Estate License Exams for Dummies. Part 2. So you want to sell real estate, a job, and basic laws. In this part, agent, salesperson, broker, associate broker, understand each of these terms so you can decide which tests and career path to take. Give a perspective on the different real estate career opportunities, from brokerages and franchisees to appraisers and inspectors. Successfully navigate your way through the different types of agency relationships, including agent, principals, and customers, as you also look at agency law. Go to the bank with a new understanding of how real estate professionals get all the important paychecks at the end of the sale. In this chapter, understand the difference between brokers and salespeople. Figuring out what real estate agents really do and how they get paid. Check out different career opportunities, including property management. Discover the details of managing a real estate office and working independently. Looking at different job-related laws you may need to know. Chapter 3. The job isn't just driving people around. Welcome to the wonderful world of real estate. I wish I had you here in the classroom so I could ask you, as to do my students on the first day of class, why do you want to get your real estate license? Sure, it's to make money, but what drew you to this field? Have you ever always been interested in houses? Do you want to become an investor or a property manager? Do the flexible hours and being your own boss appeal to you? Real estate is exciting and is constantly changing and growing. I'm going to give you some important information in this chapter about careers in real estate field. Some of the information is nothing more than background so that you have an understanding of what's real estate agents actually do and where they do it. Although interesting, it's not likely to be on the exam. The rest of the material in the chapter is fair game for state exam questions. Understanding the different responsibilities that brokers and salespeople have, how brokers and salespeople are paid, and the working relationship between brokers and salespeople is important material in some states for the broker's exam. I also give you plenty of information about property management as a career within the real estate business. Depending on your state, you may get questions about this subject. A few job-related laws also are discussed. As a means of putting all the information into the right context, I also give you an overview of a typical real estate transaction. Recognizing those in real estate business and how they got there. You'll think that simply knowing what the main players do in real estate business is pretty obvious, but I think that's because of the terminology they share, and distinctions between the players gets a little muddled. So I try to clear up those distinctions for you and talk a little about laws governing real estate licensing in this section. Here are quick descriptions of players in the real estate game. Real estate agent. A generic term pretty much refers to anyone who has a real estate license. Real estate broker. The person is the key player. Most states require that you have a broker's license to perform certain activities like selling houses for other people. Real estate salesperson. Salespeople are allowed to perform all of the activities that the state requires a real estate license for. However, a salesperson can't work independently. He must work under a licensed broker. Associate broker. This person has a broker's license but chooses to work under another broker rather than open up his own business. The agency law covers the relationship of these folks to each other to the public. For the full scope, check out Chapter 4 as well as your state licensing law. Regardless of whether you take the exam for a broker's or salesperson license, your state's exam writers expect you to know and to follow basics of who a broker is and what a broker does. So regardless of the exam, you should know the material that follows. The buck stops here. Brokers. A real estate broker is a person in real estate business who primarily is responsible for various activities on behalf of the public. I admit that sounds pretty vague, so let me explain. Every state has a state real estate licensing law, usually called the state's licensing law. The state license law governs those two primary factors in a real estate agent business. A general list of activities that can be performed only by someone holding a real estate license. The requirement for obtaining a real estate license. The state licensing law may specifically address what real estate agents must do during the course of activities, which include things like presenting all offers to the seller as soon as possible. A real estate broker is someone who is authorized by the state to perform certain list of activities on behalf of someone else and collect a fee for doing so. A broker is often called a real estate agent, which is correct in some sense that the broker acts on the behalf of someone else, a client. The license law provides a list of activities that, if they're done for another person for a fee, can be performed only by someone having a broker's license. Although the specific activities may vary from one state to another, this list of activities require a broker's license generally includes negotiating any type of real estate transaction, including sales, lease, and exchanges. A licensed salesperson or associate broker may perform these activities, but only under the supervision of a broker. For more general information on state licensing law, see Making It Legal, looking at a license law, later in this chapter. You usually can do any of the previous mentioned activities on your own behalf without having a real estate broker's license. In other words, you can sell your own house by yourself without being licensed. The implications is that you also can help someone else, like a family member, sell a house themselves without a license as long as you don't collect a fee. But remember, the gift of a fancy restaurant meal can be considered a fee. You definitely need a real estate license if you want to collect fees for your work. Moving on up, salespeople. A real estate salesperson is someone who's either worked as an employee for a real estate broker or more typical as an independent contractor paid by commission. For more about the latter, see Working as an Independent Contractor later in this chapter. Generally speaking, a real estate salesperson is someone who can do all the activities that a broker can do on behalf of a client, but must do so under the authorization and supervision of a broker. Referring to the real estate salesperson as a real estate agent is somewhat accurate. The salesperson sometimes is viewed as a sub-agent of the broker, but in fact has the same obligations as the broker with representing to respect to a client. See Chapter 4 for more about representation and agency relationships. In general, you must become a salesperson first, spend a number of years learning the business, and then become a broker. Of course, you can remain a salesperson for your entire career. In between, associate brokers. Some states have the intermediate level of licensing that is called an associate broker. An associate broker has all the qualifications as a broker, but doesn't want to operate his own real estate business. Associate brokers choose to work under the license of another broker, just like a salesperson. Be sure to find out how your state refers to this level of licensing and what the qualifications are. Making it legal. Looking at license law. You need to go over your state's real estate licensing law in details. Some questions about the law undoubtedly will be on your own state exam. Although you need to become familiar with the state's law in its entirety, pay special attention to the following. Qualifications of real estate license, brokers, associate brokers, and salesperson. Requirements for getting the various licenses. License fees and other fees associated with licensing. Continuing education requirements. Special requirements after you get your license, such as requiring a broker to maintain a place of business. Exemptions from licensing, such as for attorneys. Activities that require real estate license. Standards of conduct and acceptable practices, either with respect to the law and or a code of ethics. Enforcement of disciplinary actions for license law and standard violations. So what's a realtor? Real estate brokers and salespersons are often referred to as realtors. Sometimes this reference is correct, and sometimes it isn't. The word realtor specifically refers to someone who is a member of the National Associations of Realtors, NAR. The NAR is a trade group that represents the large segment of the real estate industry. It forms a strong lobby and provides educational information such as conferences to members. Generally speaking, you become a member of NAR by joining local NAR affiliates real estate agent board of associations. You can conduct the NAR through websites at www.realtor.com. A number of states have adopted or appointed to the NAR Code of Ethics as the Code of Ethics for real estate agents in the state, even if you're not a member of NAR. Knowing what the real estate broker and salesperson does. Real estate brokers and salesperson may do any or all the things listed in the state licensing law. Put another way, there is a list of activities in your state licensing law, and if you do these activities for another person for a fee, you need a real estate license. See the previous section for more. Although the list of activities is familiarly universal across the United States, it may vary in details from one state to the next. For exam purpose, you need to know the specific activities that require state licensing law licenses in your state. Pursuing a list of common activities. Typical activities that require real estate license are listing a property for sale, finding buyers for property that it is for sale, negotiating the sale or purchase of a property, negotiating a lease on behalf of a tenant or landlord, representing someone in exchange of properties, buying or selling options, the right to buy a piece of property at some point in time in the future on real estate, collecting rents for more than one building owner. This list of activities is best only a partial one. Your state laws probably require a license to perform most, if not all, of these activities. However, license requirements can include more or fewer activities depending on your state. Checking out a typical real estate transaction. Because buying and selling houses is the primary business of a real estate broker and salesperson, I want to give you a brief and somewhat generic overview of a typical house sale involved the real estate agent. By agent, here I mean either a broker or a salesperson. Remember, however, that a broker is primarily responsible in this transaction, with the salesperson working for her. I use the word generic because although many elements are common to all simple real estate transactions can include state and even regional differences in some specific elements. In the beginning, there was a house to sell. A couple decides to sell their house and enlists the services of a real estate agent. You're one of the several brokers or salesperson the couple invites to their home to hear your listing presentation that explains what services you offer. In addition, you probably advise the couple that or what price they are able to get for their house. After meeting with several agents, the couple chooses you, signing a listing agreement and agreeing to allow you to represent them as their agent in the transaction. For more on listing agents, see Chapter 4. As the couple's real estate agent, you begin marketing the property. In communities that have a multiple listing service, MLS, you're entering their house's information into the computer so that all other agents in the community can see what you're listing for sale. See Chapter 4 for more about the MLS. In communities with no MLS, agents may spread the word around to other real estate agencies that they have a particular house for sale. and they may depend heavily on advertising. And there may also be other formal and informal organizations or associations that permit sharing of listings so that the property gets the widest possible exposure to the market and to as many sellers as possible. Eureka! A buyer, an agent across town who's been working to find a house for another couple, sees your house on the MLS and gets in touch with you, asking for more details and making sure the house is still for sale. The crosstown agent then contacts his buyer, and then they agree to take a look at the house. After seeing the house, they agree to make an offer. The way a buyer offers a presented varies in different communities. Sometimes the offer is made in person with the buyer agents present. The offer usually is made in writing with a small check with the prospective buyers that's called a binder or earnest money. After the deal is agreed to, often after some negotiations, a contract of sale is prepared. Exactly who prepares the contract varies by state and region. In many places, however, the seller's real estate agent prepares the contract, sometimes filling in the blanks of a pre-printed contract form, but in other places, only attorneys prepare the contract. After the contract is signed, the conditions within the contract are triggered. For more about sales contracts, see Chapter 11. What would you like? Any help? Real estate agent consulting. Real estate consulting is a relatively new phenomenon that is less about the services real estate agents provide other than it is about how agents are paid. In typical real estate transactions, the real estate agent gets paid when the property is sold. In a relatively new and not widely practiced agreement called fee for service or real estate consulting, a broker can be paid for individual services leading up to the sale of a piece of property, regardless of whether the sale is complete. Take, for example, the seller who believes she can place her own advertising in the paper and handle the buyer's inspections of the house, but needs help pricing the house. She agrees to pay the broker or the salesperson through the broker a fee to provide a comparative or a competitive market analysis of the property to come up with the listing or asking price. This arrangement sometimes is referred to as providing a menu of services. You can find out more about consulting at the website of the International Association of Real Estate Consultants, www.iarec.com. A typical real estate agent contract includes a provision for a buyer to obtain a mortgage financing and may have provisions for the house to be inspected by the home inspector or engineer. The contract usually includes provisions that a marketable title must be conveyed. A marketable title means that a reasonable and proper search of the records have been conducted, showing that the title to the property has been documented from earlier owners to the current seller so that it can be conveyed or transferred without question as to who the owner is. A record search that provides whether a title is marketable is called the title search. Title insurance also may be purchased or even required as part of the contract process to ensure that the title is legal. For more events before a closing, see Chapter 9. All well that closes well. When all of the contract provisions are fulfilled, the buyer and sellers may proceed to closing, taking the real estate agent one step closer to getting paid. Pinpointing the actual moment when a real estate agent earns a commission is a somewhat complex issue. See the next section. In general, it occurs when a ready, willing, and able buyer brings an acceptable offer to the seller. Sometimes contract provisions such as financing must be satisfied before the commission can be earned. By general agreement, the commission usually is paid at the closing. When more than one broker is involved, the broker representing the seller distributes the pre-approved share of the commission to the buyer's representative or co-broker. Each broker then splits the portion or percentage of the commission with the salesperson, if any, who worked on the deal. In many places, the real estate agent runs the show and are joined at the closing by the buyer and the seller and representatives of the bank, and sometimes an attorney. In other places, lawyers do the bulk of the work, and sometimes a representative of the title company may actually conduct the closing. In some states, the closing is done in escrow, which means that as all the paperwork is completed, it is sent to an escrow agent. When the escrow agent gets everything in order, he or she sends checks, deeds, and any other important documents to appropriate parties. For more on closing process, see Chapter 9. After the closing, any of these individuals involved in the closing may record the deed in a local office of public record and officially document the transaction. It is usually a matter of custom as to who actually does the filing. Understanding how real estate brokers and salespersons get paid. The real estate agent gets paid for performing his service, which is usually bringing a buyer and a seller together to complete a property sale. Some confusion may exist on when the commission is actually earned. In most cases, the commission is earned when the meeting of the minds is reached between a buyer and a seller. In other words, when a ready, willing, and able buyer is presented to the seller, and all the terms of the contract and sales have been met. What sometimes is confusing to buyers and sellers is what the commission most often is paid at the closing, long after their meeting of the minds, when ownership of the title on the property actually changes hands. The payment of the fees at the closing is done as a convenience to the seller, who often has no money readily available except after the house is sold. Commissions frequently are shared among two brokers and two salespeople. Here's what I mean. Salesperson A, who works for the broker A, lists the house for a potential seller. Salesperson B, who works for broker B, who represents the buyer, who buys the house from the seller who lists the house with broker A. Before the sale is completed, broker A and B agree how they will split the commission. After completing the sale, broker A, the listing broker, receives a commission check from the seller and keeps his firm's part of the total amount, and then gives the remaining portion of the total commission to broker B. From there, respective proceeds, broker A and B gets prearranged portions of their commissions to their representative salespeople. As you see, the real estate salesperson doesn't get paid directly by the client. The broker receives the fee for any services rendered and then pays the salesperson. This arrangement is often written into state law. In a typical situation, the salesperson may receive a check for the commission at the closing, but the check needs to be made out to the broker. The broker then pays the salesperson from the proceeds of the sale. The split between the brokers and the salesperson is entirely negotiable and varies from one brokerage to another, and may depend on the experience of the salesperson and the volume of business that the salesperson generates. State law and federal law specific. The Real Estate Settlement and Procedures Act, which I discussed in Chapter 9, also covers prohibition regarding non-licensed persons receiving payments, finder's fees, commissions, or kickbacks as part of the transaction, including any gifts, vacations, or other non-monetary compensation received as part of the transaction. Suppose, for example, that in return for a percentage of the fee you earn, you arrange for a friend who runs a beauty salon to steer real estate buyers and sellers your way. Unless the beauty shop owner has a real estate license, you'll be violating the law that your state may have regarding kickbacks. See why checking out the state laws is so important. In an arrangement where a buyer's agent represents the buyer sometimes pays the buyer's agent. I know it seems a little odd to use the word may, because after all, you'll think a person being represented should pay the fee. in particular, in the law, nonetheless, enables a broker to agree to represent one person but be paid by another. For instance, the seller may pay the buyer's agent. I discuss more about payments and representation in general in Chapter 4. For more on myths regarding commission, check out The Price Isn't Right, Price Fixing, later in this chapter. For a scoop in figuring a commission, see Chapter 18. Working hard, career opportunities. Real estate agents, either a broker or a salesperson, can work in a number of places. In some cases, real estate training can provide good background for jobs that may not require a real estate license. In the following section, I'll give you a little background on each of these possible areas of employment, and usually that you get an exam question on the material, but you may want to know what some of the employees' possibilities are. Consider independent brokerages and national franchises. The vast majority of real estate agents are employed as salespersons working for independent brokers. An independent broker may have more than one office and be affiliated with a multiple listing system, which enables brokers to share information about properties that are for sale. For more on multiple listing systems, check out Chapter 4. Many independent brokers have chosen to affiliate themselves with national franchises. These arrangements may vary from a fair amount of control and standardization from the franchisee's headquarters to an extremely independent operation in which the local broker may pay a fee to maintain an affiliation with the national franchisee. The benefit of franchisees' affiliations often are related to the nationwide exposure they get. They provide through major advertising. Franchises frequently provide specialized training programs that require their salespeople to complete. Of course, you definitely need a real estate license to work at a brokerage. Checking out corporations and in and out of the real estate world. The sole purpose of some companies is to buy properties and then lease them out. These are real estate investment companies working for themselves. They may build on and then hold their properties or buy properties with existing structures. These companies may need people to locate properties to invest in. See Chapter 17. Or they need property managers. See Taking Care of Business and Duties of Property Manager later in this chapter. As long as you're working for the company and managing properties it owns, you may not legally need a license to do the work. However, you need to find out whether any of your state regulations require a license under those circumstances. On the other hand, if a company provides real estate property management services to other people or companies, a license is more likely to be required. In addition, a large corporation, particularly those with significant space or location needs, sometimes hire in-house real estate people. These jobs can involve leasing office or retail space for companies or buying land to locate company affiliates. Depending on the company, that you'll find yourself leasing office space for new company operations, buying a piece of property to locate a new gas station or a fast food restaurant, or negotiating with someone for an oil gas lease. Although real estate training is a good background for these jobs, a real estate license more than likely is unnecessarily for the legal purposes. A company may, however, want you to have a license as part of your qualifications. Building business with builders. When you're working with the builder, your job may range from finding land for the builder to build on to sell the house or other buildings the builder may construct. The main distinction that determines whether you need a license when working with the builder is whether you're working for that one builder as an employee, in which case you most likely do not need a license. You most likely need a license when working for one or more builders for a fee as an independent contractor, not an employee. When working with the builders, you may find yourself as an on-site salesperson. You may be spending plenty of time at the building site, showing people new homes or helping them select a design, specific features or options for the new home, and builders will build for them. Going into government. Local counties and federal governments often employ people to perform real estate services, including maintaining records, selling surplus properties, buying properties for various purposes, and obtaining easements. As a government employee, you will most likely be exempt from needing a real estate license. Governments can hire real estate agents from time to time. In this case, a license would be required. Note the government job that deals with real estate are fairly specialized and not widely available. Appreciating praising. Appraising is the field that is related to but distinct from career in real estate brokerage. Although the knowledge you gain in course and experience as a broker or salesperson is useful in appraising, a separate license and education are required to become an appraiser. An appraiser's job is to estimate the value of a piece of real estate in a variety of circumstances. The vast majority of appraisals are done for mortgages, loan purposes. Lenders hire appraisers to estimate the value of the property as a basis for the loans that the lender extends to the buyer. You can get more information about the appraising careers field at www.appraisingfoundation.org. For more on appraising properties in general, see Chapter 14. Homing in or home inspections. Many buyers have the homes they consider inspected by the home inspectors before buying them. Although you don't need a real estate license to be a home inspector, some states provide for the licensing of a home inspector. You can get more information about the career field in the International Association of Certified Home Inspectors in the U.S. website at www.nachi.org. Property management, a special kind of career opportunity. Property management is a specialized job within the real estate field because most property managers have duties for which a real estate license is required, and they usually perform these activities for more than one client. Real estate agents usually have a real estate license to be a property manager. A license may not be required in some instances, though, such as when a property manager is an employee of a real estate investment company. If you're interested in this career field, you should check out your home state's requirements for property managers. In this section, I discuss the duties and responsibilities of a property manager and the basic details of a property management agreement. For your information, check out the latest edition of Property Management for Dummies by Robert S. Griswold or John Wesley & Son, Inc. Some state licensing exams may question about property management. Taking care of business. The duties of a property manager. The duties of a property manager generally are defined as maximizing income and maintaining and increasing the overall value of the property being managed. I'll tell you more specifically here about how a property manager is responsible for the financial and physical condition of the building, and the covered management duties is actually renting out the property units or floor spaces and handling insurance. Financial responsibilities. Some of the property manager's duties include the following responsibilities. Creating an annual operating budget. This task included analyzing the building income and expenses over time. The manager also examines ways to reduce building expenses. For more about analyzing properties, see Chapter 17. Collecting rent. A manager usually creates some system of collecting and accounting for rents. Setting rents. The manager examines the rents and vacancy rates for competing buildings in the area and either sets rental rates or recommends rates to the owner. Paying bills. A manager typically responsible for paying bills for operating expenses and repairs and maintenance. Preparing periodic financial reports. These reports relate to the building's financial conditions and its income and expenses. Physical responsibilities. The building manager also is responsible for property maintenance, the property value, and by maintaining the physical condition of the property. These duties include the following. Physically analyzing the building. The property manager analyzes the building with the review towards immediately and long-term repairs and improvements that might be needed to enhance the desirable of the building and allows for higher rents. Preparation of a capital and repair budget. Using property and the analyst as its basics, the property manager creates a capital budget that includes larger improvements and repairs to the building. Capital budgets items typically include the replacement of major items such as roofs, boilers, and air conditioning units, while repairing budget items deal more with making repairs and maintaining those fixtures. Maintenance. Part of the manager's responsibilities is arranging the routine cleaning and maintenance of the building and grounds, including scheduling janitor services, preventive maintenance, and needing repairs on equipment like the boiler. The manager typically hires out people to do these jobs as his own employees for this work, or uses a combination of the two. Rental responsibilities. A manager usually responsible for renting the space in the building. I say usually because sometimes the owner takes care of this task directly or hires a real estate agent other than the manager to find tenants and negotiate leases. You can find out more about different types of leases and their provisions in Chapter 12. Advertising for tenants. Advertising for tenants is another rental responsibility for rent. Signs in buildings and printing ads in appropriate media, such as newspapers for apartments and specialized publications for office or industrial spaces, can be useful. Billboards, direct mailing, internet advertising also may be used. Radio, TV ads usually are less effective but may prove useful in some markets. One common held belief is that the recommendation by satisfied tenants may be the most effective advertisement for a building. The manager is also responsible for providing necessary services to the tenants as agreed to in the lease, for trying to settle any disputes that may arise with tenants, for any engagement in the eviction activities if necessary. Insurance responsibilities. Property managers sometimes analyze the insurance needs of a building that they manage or call an insurance expert to do it. Unlike a single-family house, which usually has a single insurance policy that covers a number of large, complex buildings, they require different types of insurance policies to cover specific items. Proper insurance coverage is part of the overall risk management plan that a property manager needs to consider. In general, managing risk is some way dealing with potential liability issues can be handled by a system known as CART, C-A-R-T, on controlling, avoiding, retaining, and transferring risk. These four general risk management options are described in the list below. Controlling risk means anticipating it and preparing for it. Emergency lighting systems are an example of control risk. Avoiding risk means removing the source of danger. Storage or paint of other flammable materials can be removed from a building and moved to another location. Retaining risk means accepting the liability. This step sometimes is taken when the risk of something happens is small, or in essence, when you agree to pay whatever liability costs arise from the building's fund. When a particular event does occur, self-insurance is another way of describing the situation. An alternative to retaining a risk is purchasing insurance coverage with a very high deductible. Payment may be made by the owner before insurance kicks in. Transferring risk means buying the appropriate type of amount of insurance to cover the payment whenever the insured incident occurs. The following are more common types of insurance that are available to cover different types of risk. Boiler and machinery insurance. Because of the substantial cost of heat units and air conditioning units in large buildings, a separate type of insurance is available to cover the replacement and repair of this type of machinery. Casualty insurance. This type of insurance covers losses caused by theft, vandalism, and burglary. Co-insurance. This coverage essentially is for situations in which the owner takes on part of the risk by self-insuring for a portion of the risk. Incorporating a large deductible before the insurance policy starts to pay off is one example. Error or omission insurance. This type of insurance can cover property managers against any errors they make in performing of their duties. This insurance does cover losses caused by fraud or other dishonest or malfeasible activities. Fire and hazard insurance. Depending on what it covers, this type of policy sometimes is called an all-risk, all-peril policy. It basically covers loss of the property caused by fire, storms, and other types of damaging conditions. This type of policy usually does not cover flooding and earthquake damage. Liability insurance. This type of insurance covers losses caused by injuries that are the result of negligence on the part of the landlord. The classic case is the person who falls on the icy sidewalk that the landlord was supposed to have cleaned. Rent loss insurance. This insurance sometimes is called business interruption insurance or consequential loss insurance. It pays the owner of the building for the loss of rent from tenants if the building is destroyed by fire. Surety bonds. Technically, a surety bond provides payment whenever something is not done within an agreed upon period of time. Whenever the coverage provided by the surety bonds has come to means making up for the losses caused by the dishonest act of an employee. For example, this type of insurance covers a loss that is a result of the rents being stolen by the rent collector. Can you imagine? If you're interested in the field of property management, you can get more information from the following: the Institute of Real Estate Management, www.irem.org, is connected to the National Association of Realtors. They can get information on training from the organization. They award a Certified Property Management CPM designation. The Building Owners and Management Association International, www.boma.org, is another source of information, particularly with regards to the management of commercial buildings. Information and sometimes trading in properties designation also can be obtained from International Council of Shopping Centers, www.icsc.org, the Urban Land Institute, www.uli.org, the National Apartment Association, www.naahq.org, and the International Real Estate Institute, www.iami.org/IREI. Saying yes, the property management agreement. The basis for a relationship between the property manager and the property owner is a contract called the property management agreement. Although every agreement is unique, particularly with respect to the details and duties responsible and payments, certain elements need to be specified, addressed in any property management agreement, including who, the parties to who the agreement, both the property owner and the property manager, needs to be clearly identified. In a particular situation, both parties need to sign. An appropriate corporate officer needs to sign for the corporation. Where the property to be managed needs to be clearly identified, at least by its address, and possibly by the legal description. You can check out the specifics of a legal description in Chapter 9. If any element of the property are not in the managed by the property manager, they need to be identified. For example, if a building has a large empty piece of land next to it and leased as a parking lot for use by an adjacent building, the owner may not want to have the manager have you manage that lot. How long? The term and length of the agreement needs to be stated. Owners tend to want a short term frame, managers want a longer one. A minimum of 1 year is generally recommended because it gives the manager a chance to show their skills and recoup some of their initial expenses in setting up the management programs for the building. What? Manager's duties. The manager's duties need to be clearly identified and stated. All parties to the agreement need to know whether the management will conduct rents, pay bills, contract for maintenance, and so on. For more, see Taking Care of Business, the duties of the property manager earlier in this chapter. What? Manager authorities as an agent. A property manager usually is considered a general agent. As a general agent, a manager usually has authority over a range of activities on behalf of the owner. The extent of this authority needs to be spelled out in the agreement. For example, the agreement needs to flesh out whether the manager has the final word in setting rent rates or must first check with the owner for the final approval. What information and when reporting. The principal form in communication between the property owner and the managers are periodic reports prepared by the manager. The timing and intent of these reports are negotiable and vary with the types of complexities of the building being managed. Monthly expenses are typically and can contain a variety of income expenses, vacancies, expiring leases, and maintenance information. Who pays what? And the allocation of expenses. This part of the agreement states which costs, if any, is paid out by the manager's fees, rather than the form of income of the building. For example, the manager may be responsible for the cost of advertising, especially if the manager receives the extra bonus for new leases. How much? The fee. The fee, if any arrangement, is completely negotiable and is usually based on one or more of the following: commission on new leases, fixed fees, percentage of the gross before expenses are deducted, or net after the expenses are deducted, income from the building, a combination of the two or three of the first three. What landlords want. A clear statement of the owner's objective on owning the building can be made as part of the management agreement or addressed in some other written format, such as a letter of understanding between the owner and the property manager. Regardless of how the owner's objectives are handled, the manager must have a clear idea whether the owner is seeking long or short-term profits or whether the financial objectives from this investment. Furthermore, it equally is important for the manager to adequately meet the owner's objectives without compromise her honesty or ethics. Managing the real estate office. You're the boss, Miss or Mr. Broker. If you're taking a state examination for the salesperson license, you probably can't skip this section. But if you're taking a broker's exam, you need to read this section. Some states expect appraising brokers to know something about the administrative duties and responsibilities of running a real estate brokerage, including supervising people who work for you and training those people and setting office policies. Keep an eye out. Supervision. State laws may vary, but in general, a broker is usually required to supervise the people who work for her. This extremely specific requirement makes the broker responsible for the actions of the salespeople who work for her. The responsibilities extend to violations of the state licensing law, fair housing laws, illegal or fraudulent activities. The extent of liability and punishment is, of course, determined by the state licensing office, and in the case of criminal or civil action, by the courts. The type of questions you likely to get on this subject falls into two categories. What your state law has to say about brokers' responsibility with respect to supervising their people, their salespeople. Expectations that you know when you get important points of the state licensing law, which you and your salesperson are expected to comply. Making it legal. Looking at license law earlier in the chapter. Although this material may be information you found out about when pursuing your salesperson's license, you still need to review the specific information that applies to your state broker's exam. Teaching me, training. Brokers are expected to provide training to their salespeople. Most states require prospective salespeople to receive formal training throughout pre-licensing courses before they can get a salesperson's license. Even though the training gives you the basic background and a minimum amount of knowledge that the state requires you to have to work as a real estate agent, it often does not cover the day-to-day real-world activities as an agent. Brokers are expected to provide that day-to-day type of training. After you get your salesperson's license, you can stay a salesperson forever. In most states, however, if you want to become a broker, you're usually required to gain some hands-on experience. Setting office policies. Rules are rules. Formulating a periodic updating in office policies and procedures manual is suggested means of a list of particular fulfillments that training and supervisor obligations as a broker. This manual was distributed to all employees along with training in the policies and procedures of the brokerage. Because most salespeople work as independent contractors, see the next section, the policy and procedures manual needs to be relied on word like suggested and recommended rather than must. The subject contains in-office policy manuals can range from dealing with attorneys and other professionals to record keepings, using supplies, and attend sales meetings. Working as an independent contractor. Most real estate salespeople work as an independent contractor for their brokers. This typically working relationship between the salesperson and the brokerage affects everything from taxes to daily work. In this section, I explain this relationship and some of the issues you need to understand for the exam purposes. The best way to understand working status as an independent contractor is to contract it with the regular employee. A real estate salesperson can work as an employee for a broker, but doing so is not the norm. Although he's the boss, the broker doesn't have the same detailed authority over the independent contractor as with the regular employee. The two maintain differences that are: employees must work the hours the employer tells them to work. An employer must also take out taxes from the employee's pay and pay Social Security on behalf of the employee. Independent contractors are responsible for paying their own taxes and Social Security. They can deduct certain business expenses from their pre-tax pay that an employee can't deduct. Independent contractors can work their own hours and basically do the job their own way. An employer can't force an independent contractor to work certain hours or attend certain meetings because that can jeopardize the independent contractor status of a salesperson. However, part of the broker's duty is to supervise and train salespeople. She can require attendance by certain training activities. An employment agreement between the broker and the salesperson has become virtually mandatory to provide and maintain an independent contractor's relationship. Focusing on job-related laws that you need to understand. A few common misunderstandings about the real estate business are pretty serious issues because they deal with federal antitrust laws. State exam writers expect you to be able to answer questions about them. Violations of the Sherman Antitrust Act can result in fines paid to federal governments in varying amounts up to triple the damages paid to the injured party. The price isn't right. Price fixing. First of all, no rule says the real estate agent must be paid on a commission basis. Just to be sure you're clear on this, a commission generally a percentage of the final sales price of the property that usually is paid upon completion of the sale. See understanding how real estate brokers and salesperson gets paid early in the chapter. Pay by commission is a common practice across the United States, but it has never been established as a requirement by the government or private agencies. No such thing as a standard commission exists. No state that I know sets commission rates. No local real estate board or other association of real estate agents have an authority to set commission rates or create any standardized fees for services. In fact, any attempt among real estate agents to create a standardized fee schedule is and has viewed as violating federal antitrust laws. The fact that many brokers, in particular areas, charge the same commission is a matter of competition and individual business decisions. The Sherman Antitrust Act, which is a federal law that prohibits activities that are considered to be a restraint of trade and therefore against consumers' interests, forbids any type of price fixing in the industry. In simple terms, what that means is that if I own an appliance store and you own an appliance store, we can't get together once a month and decide whether we're both going to charge the same price for a washing machine. The real estate industry antitrust laws essentially have been taken one step further as a result of the famous court decision in a case called United States versus Foley. The results of this case determined that even if no actual consultation occurred between individuals about price fixing, merely discussing among competitors a price or service is considered an invitation to fix prices and therefore violates antitrust laws. As a result, the industry operates on the principle that discussing fees between brokers is illegal unless the brokers are cooperating on the same deal. Fees may be discussed in-house between brokers and salespeople and brokers and salespersons and their clients. In other cases, the courts determine what local boards or realtors can dictate, recommend, or publish rate schedules. Bad break, market allocation. The Sherman Antitrust Act also has a provision against marketing allocation that affects real estate professionals. Market allocation is an agreement among competitors to divide the market in some way. Consider two brokers, for example, who own their own brokerages and meet and agree that one of them will handle all listings west of Main Street and the other will handle all listings east of Main Street. Add to the mix two other brokers who met and agreed that one will handle only houses worth more than $300,000 and the other will handle only houses under that price. All four brokers have violated the Sherman antitrust provision against the market allocation. Feeling shunned? Group boycotting. Group boycotts. When competitors get together and agree not to do business with someone, violates the Anti-Sherman Trust Act. Say X brokerage and Y brokerage don't like the way Z brokerage does business. They meet and agree not to make any referrals to Z brokerage. The X and Y brokerage have just violated the Sherman Antitrust Act, prohibiting against group boycotts. However, an individual broker can decide not to do business with another broker because he believes the other broker acts unethical, is getting together as a group to boycott. That's against the law. What's your condition? Tie-in arrangements. Any requirement to buy one product or services on condition that you buy another product or services is called a tie-in arrangement or tying arrangement and is an antitrust violation. Say I'm a broker who owns a property that a builder wants to buy, and as part of the sale I require that the builder relist the property with me, list back when he sells it. Because I required the builder to list the property with me as a condition of my selling it to him, I broke the law. And that was part 2. So you want to sell real estate, the job basic laws, chapter 3, the job. It isn't just driving people around. Thank you.